We all have our own belief systems and paradigms that govern the way we think about the world and govern the way that we choose to live our lives. If we take time and reflect on what the overarching beliefs are about the way the world is, the way the world works, and how we ought to act in it, time and time again we will come across things that aren't very grounded in reality. Now, if they aren't very grounded in reality, then why are they present in the first place? Well, they're grounded in reality from our perspective. See, what happens is as you grow and develop through your childhood is you adopt certain beliefs. You take assumptions about the way things are from culture and from the people closest to you. You observe certain patterns of behavior and think that that's how things ought to be, that's how you ought to behave. And a lot of times this is not actually the case. So what's beneath all this is that we all have conditioning that is not grounded, doesn't have to be there, and holds us back. We all have a lot of good conditioning too, but there's also a lot of junk, a lot of stuff that we're better off recognizing and transcending. And you can do this. You don't have to take your conditioning for granted. It doesn't have to stay there. Now, the first step in being able to remove what is not in your best interest is self-awareness. So if you have a meditation practice already, you're probably going to notice more and more starts to come up that you recognize, oh, I've been operating in this way. That's just kind of a natural consequence of any meditation and inquiry that you're doing over a period of time. But if we want to get a lot more direct, a self-reflection exercise that you can do is ask yourself, what do I think about myself and my abilities? And try to find anything that's either empowering or anything that you believe about yourself and what you can do that is a limitation. And then you can consider, where did these beliefs originate from? And once you have a point of origin, that's going to help you really get grounded in the fact that that isn't something that's inherently true about yourself. So let's say you have a belief that you're incapable of being resourceful and creating a business surrounding something that you're passionate about. And you investigate that that's something that culture seemed to condition in you. Maybe people told you that it just wasn't realistic. So you never really gave it a good go, and now you don't really have the skill set that it would take to get something like that off the ground. So now you have your point of origin, and now you also have a version of yourself who the belief is actually a little bit true about currently. And you've been conditioned to think that way. You've been conditioned to not go and get yourself that skill set required. But even if the belief is actually somewhat true in this moment, it doesn't mean it has to stick around. And this is really, really how you start to unlearn conditioning, is when you start to get proof of concept that the opposite is true. So you start to develop some skills, you start to get a little bit of success in developing that business, let's say. Now you recognize to yourself that the conditioning was never true. It was never something that inherently was a part of you and had to be there. And this is true for any limitations that you hold about yourself and your belief system that are holding you back. So if you had to break all that down and summarize it into two concepts there, it is awareness over the fact that it's simply a belief. Get grounded in the fact that your conditioning is simply adopted, and it has an origin that is not innate to you, to who you are and what you can do. And then start to develop some proof of concept, start to develop some skills once you're empowered with that awareness that indicate the opposite, that indicate, oh, you actually can do that thing that you've been conditioned to believe you can't. And that's really what's going to knock the ball out of the park there for you. Once you get that proof of concept, you're going to be able to start shifting areas of your life left, right, and center once you have momentum in breaking one set of conditionings that you have. Because now you have proof of concept for this whole concept in general. And hopefully that'll be empowering for you to recognize that nothing has to be the way it is in your belief system if it is not in best service to you. Okay, now we discussed limiting beliefs. as a part of your conditioning. And those are probably the most dominating thing that people carry with them, that they've adopted from culture or family. But there's probably a lot of other areas of your life where you've been conditioned to feel certain ways and act in certain ways that are very subconscious, that go very under the radar. So just a quick example of this is how you might handle conflict with a loved one or an argument. Perhaps you have poor communication skills, you get emotionally overwhelmed in these situations. Perhaps you get pretty angry, whatever your response might be. Maybe it's something that doesn't handle conflict very well. That is not something that has to stick around. That is also a result of conditioning. It's something that's a lot more subconscious than a belief system about yourself. But the way that you can begin to find these things, as I mentioned before, meditation practices are always going to reveal parts of yourself to you. They're always going to just usher in more self-awareness. But a more direct approach here is to take a look at patterns and habits that you have in your life surrounding your relationships, personal challenges, or work, and recognize where things are not in best service of your well-being and the well-being of the people around you. And this is going to help you highlight that sort of junk conditioning that we talked about. A lot of times it can rise as a result of traumatic events that have happened in your life, or maybe that was just how you've been taught to behave based off of the people who raised you. Either way, you can unlearn these things, and the first step required is awareness. Awareness alone in these contexts is going to be curative, and then you can ask yourself and explore what ought to take the place of that junk conditioning that you want to throw away. And maybe those are some better communication skills in that example that we gave before that you ought to develop so that you have the tools and resources to be able to throw away that junk conditioning, we'll call it. All right, guys, I hope that helps. Self-awareness will change your life. Conditioning is something that you can unlearn, but before you can unlearn the junk conditioning, you have to identify it. If you like the video, be sure to subscribe to the channel for more content. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.